know, while we're talking about the warrior class, one of the things I noticed is, and this is something that's global, globally, people are more likely to want to hear and hear in general from politicians more than generals, more than soldiers. You know, even though soldiers are more likely to be in their vicinity than politicians are, right? Everybody has somebody who was either in the armed forces or in, whether it be police forces, some form of government, military force, right? Everybody is more likely to know and be friends with or be related to somebody who is in the armed forces way more than somebody who is a politician, right? But we oftentimes don't get to hear from that class, whether you be a developed nation or a lesser developed nation, right? A developing nation. Excuse me. But listening to a general speak rather than a politician, and I don't mean in the sense of a commander in chief, right? I mean like a real general. Listening to a general speak probably will give a perspective that is lacking when it comes to understanding global politics and understanding how hegemonies really operate from a perspective of force rather than power, because force is a totally different game than power, right? And they have both. One good example is, again, how foreign influence affects developing nations, especially in Africa, right? The burden of proof is always on uh, us to prove that there's foreign influence. But obviously, we all know how, um, you know, airtight the intelligence community is. And it's kind of like, again, the soldier analogy and the veteran. Veterans are not taken care of, at least, here, right? Even though we know more. Politicians are taken care of, the veterans aren't taken care of, right? So it's not just in developing nations that the warrior class isn't necessarily listened to, even though um, they're doing a lot of the legwork as it pertains to these power games. The foreign influence burden of proof is on us. And they're constantly like, well, prove it. And this next clip is gonna exemplify this precisely with General Christopher Musa, right? And he's not making any accusations. He's simply asking questions that, if you ponder on, you'll come to the logical conclusion. And the logical conclusion itself, I think, is important to hear from. And I do not think a politician would have communicated this way. I do not think a politician would have broken this down as tactically as he did it, right? So I have to share this. Wait one moment. Boom.
I just can't understand why anybody will wake up and say that we're killing people when we're actually not doing the same. And guess what? Where the Giwa barracks you were talking about, we have all the humanitarian agencies working there. You have the UN working, local and international organizations are working. Are we saying they are complicit? There is nothing we're doing.
Fair use. And see what I mean? Great question, right? Other international organizations are present. By the way, for those of you who don't know, he's discussing Boko Haram, right? And he's going to get down to some things that were just pure observations when dealing with Boko Haram and their surrender, right?
In the back. So if they don't say it, which means Amnesty International is equal, and Amnesty is equally there. So which means they're equally accusing all these other organizations of being complicit.
So just to be clear, you would be prepared to go to the ICJ?
This is a beautiful example, right? He's saying All of these other organizations are there. Why aren't they being accused of being complicit, right? And now, obviously, because this guy has to give him pushback. He's like, "Are you prepared to go to the ICJ?" Right? But he didn't make any accusations. He simply asked a question, right? He simply asked a question. And the way he handles this is brilliant, by the way. He's extremely tactful.
In The Hague and answer these accusations.
We're not scared of anything because we don't have anything of such.
We've seen Boko Haram regroup and regroup and regroup. What is your answer to that? That you have in some way fed the insurgents?
The problem is that I think
he said, "What is your answer to that? That you have somehow fed the insurgents." Fed the insurgents, right? So again, notice how he deflected. The interviewer deflected from that brilliant question of why aren't all of these other organizations being accused, right? Not even by the world, just by him as an interviewer.
We've talked to international community. Let's find out the funding. When they started surrendering, by the time we left, so as we speak, we have over 120,000 that have surrendered. Most of them, when you find them, they are coming with hard currencies. How did they get them? How are they funded? How did they get the training? How did they get the equipment?
What is your suspicion?
120,000 coming in with hard currencies. Where's their funding? Where's their training? Right? Brilliant questions. Brilliant questions. No accusations, just questions.
Well, maybe an international conspiracy. You don't know. Who knows? How are they be able to sustain themselves for 50?
You see that? Maybe an international conspiracy. Who knows? Right? He's not making any accusations. He's just giving you enough questions to make a logical conclusion.
10 years. That is one question I think everybody should ask himself. For Nigeria to be able to hold them, and you go to Nigeria, everything seems to be working well.
You must have an idea. I mean, let's not talk about international conspiracy theories. Let's give some hard facts.
Well, I just leave it at.
Did you see that? Did you see that? First of all, look at his face, right? Look at his face. Because he can't believe that his intelligence is being insulted that way, right? He can't believe that his intelligence is being insulted that way. And now he's being asked to give some hard facts as if he made an accusation and he has to prove it. But he didn't make an accusation. All he did was ask questions. This is how Africans are treated, not only in the media, right, but in academic spaces and in political spaces, right? This is how they are treated, as if they are too stupid to think critically, right? And he's a general, right? He's a general. He knows far more about fighting war than the condescending tone that this interviewer, right, has. This is insane, man.
Talk about international conspiracy theories. Let's give some.
Let's not talk about international conspiracy theories. He never said it was. He said maybe, which is big. That's big. At the very least, he's showing he's open to other options, right? Even though we all know what he's leading to, but he's smart enough not to make any accusations, just to ask questions, which is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Masterclass.
Hard facts.
Well, I just leave it at that.
Let's have hard facts. I just leave it at that, right? And again, remember, the burden of proof is on us. That's the cold. That's really the cold part about it. Is the burden of proof is on us, right? But again, we all know, just like how it's hard to prove that the vets in, the United States don't get the fair treatment, right? Just like it's hard to prove any other government APT, advanced persistent threat conspiracy. You can't. That's why the intelligence community exists. So trying to ask a general on live, not necessarily live, but on an internationally watched interview to make accusations, right? Knowing that the burden of proof is in the obscurity of the intelligence community. That's absurd, right? But again, this is the kind of just condescending tones with which a lot of African leaders are treated when it comes to the media, right? This is how they're treated, man. And this is something that I think we should take heed of. We should really start to listen to not just the politicians, but start to listen to the warrior class, man. Let's keep listening.
I'm sure they know, and I'm sure everybody knows that these are the challenges we're facing that needs to be addressed. So the UN need to come in to ensure that, because we need to trace the funding. How are they sustaining themselves for 15 years?
What does the UN coming in mean? What does that look like?
Track the funding. It's international flow. We don't have control over that.
Whose interest is it to see Nigeria destabilize?
Well, I don't know. You don't know. Your guess is as good as mine.
Right? Very good. Masterclass, man. He's truly teaching a masterclass. He said, what would the UN do? He said, track the funding. Again, he repeated himself about 4 or 5 times. Track the funding, right? But again, anything to distract from the funding. Let's watch some more. Let's watch some more.
NGOs, there are so many things. If we want to go into NGO issues, there are so many things I had. Initially, when the NGOs came in, when we started, they didn't want any
fair use,
any oversight function. They didn't want us to know where they were going to. We had issues with that, because now they will go into the enclave of the terrorists and go and treat them. You are treating the same people that is attacking the communities. You tell them no, that you are neutral. How neutral can you be? We've had situations where allegations of arms, them conveying arms to us just to make sure that the war continues.
So now here he goes from making accusations to bringing those same hard facts that he was just told he didn't have, right? Where NGOs are saying that they're neutral, yet they're treating the same organizations that are harming people, right? That's not neutral. That's a military allegiance, right? That's a military allegiance. How neutral are you actually? And that's what he's asking, man. This is brilliant.
We've had situations where they will tell you they are taking food to communities. Halfway, they'll tell you the trailer has broken down. By next morning, the trailer is empty. And that vehicle that is broken down, the driver will just go and drive it and take it back. So what had happened? You have funded those guys. You are taking care of them equally. We've had several situations like that. So we said, no, it can't continue like that. And that's why we insisted with the state government that, look, the state government must know what's going on. So if any NGO comes, it must be registered. We must monitor what's going on. We've had situations where NGOs will come in with.
And the funny thing is people will act like that is abnormal. That's not abnormal. That's 100% not abnormal, especially when there's a shroud of mystery surrounding the sources of funding of terrorist organizations.
Unidentified individuals entering communities, you don't even know what they're doing. They don't have NGO ID cards. They are not part of the government. Who is taking them to? What are they going there for? And so by the time we start monitoring what they were doing, we noticed things started getting better. So which means something is going on somewhere.
So now again, this is him explaining full blown, right? Full blown after having enough evidence, right? This is now him giving the actual story, painting the real picture. The NGOs started becoming monitored and the activity went down. Is correlation causation? Not necessarily, but is something fishy? Necessarily.
Because they come from all over the world and you don't know who is who. So that's why for every country, please regulate what the NGOs are doing, monitor what they're doing. Most times you hear them telling you that they spent $10 million, and then you wonder where.
The funny thing is, right? And this is how brilliant the timing is on this one. Isn't the United States government creating the Department of Government Efficiency? Didn't they make the Department of Government Efficiency, Doge, just to track that exact same thing that he is saying should be tracked, which is the government spending? Isn't that precisely what the United States wants to do right now, right? Isn't that precisely what we're seeing with Elon Musk and all the receipts that are coming out? Oh, they spent 20 million where? They spent 15 million where? This is exactly the same thing. But remember, always remember, man, we're going to cut that right. Always remember, when it comes to Africa, the rules are always different, right? Remember, the West, rules for thee, not for me. You know what I'm saying? Just how it is. But like, comment, subscribe, man. I appreciate